Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to another episode of Glam Metal Gems. This is where we take a deeper look into the genre itself at bands and albums that slipped through the cracks, ran under the radar, hopefully shining a new light on these gems and bringing them to a wider audience. I've got 5 such albums I'm going to do that with here in just a bit. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel and haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things do help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by turning on notifications, you're going to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this with Glam Metal Gems. All right, so we're going to jump into 5 of these albums. We're going to go by year of release, just to try to give it a little bit of order here. First one up is a Canadian band, Gypsy Rose Pray from 1990. This is their debut studio album released on Simmons Records. In fact, you can see the little money bag symbol right there from Gene Simmons himself of Kiss. In some ways that can either excite you about this or not. And in my case, I was a little on the fence both ways because sometimes the albums were absolutely fantastic and other times they seemed like they were trying too hard. This is one that is just right down the middle. It's good, it's great, all the cool stuff like that. Gene Simmons is an executive producer on here, but he didn't co-write any of the songs. Lots of other ones, bands that would appear on Simmons Records, he would co-write with. And I always like those for getting what I sort of considered like lost Kiss songs. But this one here, they write everything. So that sort of sets them apart on this. The music is full of melody and hooks, though, a lot like the best Kiss songs. So again, if you are a Kiss fan, I would draw your attention to this opening track, Poisoned by Love, as a sleazy little rocker of a song that shows why Gene Simmons was interested in this band. I also think it's probably the best song on the album, but it'll definitely let you know what's going on here. The songs on here, though, are just killer songs that keep coming one right after the other. It's a wonder why this album didn't do better, why it would have slipped through the cracks, even released in 1990. Maybe if it had come out a little bit sooner, but who knows, what is the rationale behind why some of these albums don't do better than they did. Again, the market could have just been oversaturated and flooded, of course. Cool thing, the band features Rob Laidlaw on bass, and that's actually, I knew him before I knew of this album, so it was me looking through this and finding him as a member, which caught my eye and said, hey, I want to give this a chance. But he's played with a lot of notable Canadian artists like Lee Aaron, Kim Mitchell, Helix, Glass Tiger, Honeymoon Suite, and currently with Toronto. But a lot of other artists were under his, list of bands that he's played with and stuff. So certainly worth checking out. Gypsy Rose as just some great glam metal, but also a little bit of connection there with Rob Laidlaw being in the lineup. Maybe you can make the connection to other projects he's been in. All right, next one up, we've got Austin, Texas band Johnny Law, their self-titled release, 1991. This is their debut studio album released on Metal Blade Records. Now, the album doesn't have anything typical to what normally would be on Metal Blade Records. The band was actually signed after a performance of playing at the South by Southwest Festival, which should tell you a little bit something right there. But I think it's filled with more down and dirty biker rock, similar to bands like Little Caesar. The music is real fun, upbeat rock and roll, smoke and lead guitar work on here, lots of swagger from the South. Those are all kinds of key things about glam metal, meaning the swagger, the sleaze, smoke and guitar work, that sort of stuff. And we got lots and lots of that on this album. Check out the first 2 tracks, Pieces of the Bottle and Promises. Both of those are feel-good rock and roll pieces that I think if you give that a listen, this album will for sure make you wonder why they didn't get more popular than they did. Okay, next up, we've got Fort Lauderdale, Florida-based band Jesse Strange, self-titled release from 1992, debut studio album released on Epic Records. And at least the story for this album goes that it was delayed from 1991 to 1992, due in part by the parent record company, Sony Records, pushing everything off in order to focus on Michael Jackson's then album at the time. And of course, you know, with the onset of grunge music, we all know what happened and everything was downhill, you know, after that point. But there are a lot of killer hidden gem pieces of music on this album. And, you know, if it had come out a little sooner, before grunge had broken, perhaps this would have been successful. Of course, you know, hindsight always 2020 on a lot of these things. Do check out the opening song, Raise a Little Hell. This is, I think, would have been really big if grunge hadn't hit in 1991. It's got all the classic hallmarks of glam metal music on it, those distinctive vocals, amazing guitar riffs and solos, melodic hooks. It's got a lot of sass and sleaze from the era, all rolled into a killer sounding album that, in my opinion, really stands out for what the genre was all about. The band would release a second album, Looking for Strange, in 2006. So you do have something else you can track down from this great band, but definitely check out the Epic Records release, their self-titled debut. Okay, next one up, we got Canadian band Slick Toxic doing the nasty from 1992. Debut album from them, released on Capitol Records. Band features vocalist Nick Walsh, who would go on to sing for another Canadian band, Moxie. I'm definitely glad he was able to stick around and do that. At the time of release, this album, MTV played, at least like Headbangers Ball and other shows like that, played two of their songs quite a bit, Hell of a Time and White Lies, Black Truth. So much so that I went out and bought this at the time. Most of these I would be digging up after the fact and discovering them much later on. But this one here is one I actually remember from that time that just unfortunately didn't get the attention that it was due. Now, at least not in the US, because I did read that the play of those singles and things of that nature did lead this album to go gold in Canada. So certainly good for them. I wish this album had been much bigger worldwide. It's full of sleaze and swagger. Again, typical hallmarks of all the glam stuff. You've got the big guitars, you've got gang-style vocals on it, tongue-in-cheek rock and roll innuendo lyrics. This one is full of that sort of stuff. Now, the band had a previous EP called Smooth and Deadly with 4 songs. This came out in 1991, and following that, they put out this album, so being the first full-length release. And they would release a second album called Irrelevant, and this one here, unfortunately, didn't do anything to save their waning star at that point. So they just kind of disappeared, and this album went with it. I am glad, though, as I said, that Nick resurfaced in Moxie. Before that, he had a really good band that was all his own, Famous Underground. You can check that out if you like the vocals that he's doing as part of this. While the music is a little bit different, you still get those trademark vocals. And for me, a lot of what makes the glam metal stuff the way that it is, what I enjoy about it, are those really distinctive vocals. Okay, last one to talk about here, Los Angeles, California band Jailhouse and their self-titled release from 1998. The band did release a live EP before this one called Alive in a Mad World, and this came out, it has got 5 tracks on it, and it came out in 1989. So I don't really think this was recorded and released in 98. I think this is one of those times where the album was probably made around 91, 92, shelved, and then got a release in 1998. But for like lots of these albums and things I'm talking about, there's not a lot of information on these bands out there. So sort of scour the internet to try to find out as much as I can to give you guys some background and history on these groups, but can't always find everything out there. So like I said, the way it sounds, and then something I'm going to touch on in a minute here will point out as to why I think this was a 91, 92 era written album. Now, the band features 3 ex-members of Rough Cut. When Paul Shortino, the vocalist of Rough Cut, left to join Quiet Riot, three members of Jailhouse formed this group: Amir Durak on guitar, Matt Thor on bass, and Dave Alford on drums. But what's also cool is that the band also featured vocalist Danny Simon on here, and he would go on to front 80s rock band Autograph. He's currently with them. Their sound is driving melodic hard rock with socially relevant lyrics, a little different than the other bands that are out there. We were talking about Slick Toxic and having those sort of tongue-in-cheek innuendo rock and roll lyrics. That was very typical of the glam metal movement. The socially relevant lyrics, not so much. So that did set this band apart, and maybe one of the reasons that they didn't get signed at that time and put the major label out. Of course, all conjecture at this point. Of interesting note, though, the song Religion was recorded by Nelson under the title of Do You Believe in Religion? Now, it had different lyrics to it, but the music is the same. What's interesting is the version on here is listed by Michael Raphael, the guitar player, as being the sole writer, and under Nelson, if you go to their album Imaginator, which was their unreleased second album, recorded in 92 but shelved, and then interestingly released the same year as this in 1998. So both of these albums coming out in 1998, but the Nelson one lists Matthew and Gunnar Nelson as the writers of the song, yet the music is exactly the same. The refrain is exactly the same. It's just the chorus and the lyrics to this are different between the two. Either way, very good stuff. Definitely recommend checking this out. And beyond that EP, they did put out a best of in 2010 called Straight at the Light. I think that one song might be a new one. Everything else on here comes from the EP or the one album that they had. But there you go, 5 amazing glam metal gems for you guys to check out. Perhaps you guys have other ones that you like. This is actually episode number 12 that I've done. So there are 11 before this one, which means I've done 55 other glam metal albums. But certainly let me know your thoughts on what glam metal gems you like and whether or not you've heard of any of these great ones here. All right, everyone, take care. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.